We continue our World Cup preview starting with the Pot 1 team in Group D, and that is France. That name might sound familiar because France actually won the last World Cup, but let's figure out how they got to this one. France had a pretty difficult qualifying group. They were handed not only Ukraine, who's a very competent team, but Bosnia and Herzegovina, previously in the Nations League A, and a very competent team as well. But France ended up making it look pretty easy in the end. Out of 8 matches, France won 5 of them, 2 draws against Ukraine, 1 draw against Bosnia and Herzegovina, but an emphatic win against Kazakhstan and a win against Finland made sure that France rolled through the last couple of match days comfortably, if it wasn't comfortable earlier. Now, Antoine Griezmann, who just when he puts on a France shirt becomes a whole different player, led the way. He scored 6 goals in just 8 matches. So when it comes to playing for France, he absolutely still has it. And for France, that's a very good thing because the French national team has been one of the leading national teams in the world. It is hard to argue over the last 20 years that any national team has been better. And that's because France has won 2 of the last 6 World Cups. In fact, when we look at their previous performances at World Cups, they're on a hot streak, even compared to what France was capable of earlier. The last 6 World Cups, France has made the final 50% of the time. They've made the final 3 times. In 2006, they lost on penalty kicks. If those penalty kicks go the other way, we're talking absolutely about the best national team in the world over the last 20 years. France is that close. And because they won it 4 years ago, France is actually looking to become the first repeat champion since freaking Brazil in 1962. That was the last time that teams won back-to-back World Cup titles, which leads to this whole idea of a team being cursed because they won it 4 years previously. I believe this French team has an opportunity to beat that curse. But I do have some good news for Italy, which is not necessarily what you expected because France's amazing run in the World Cup came after they failed to qualify for consecutive World Cups, which has weirdly happened twice in France's World Cup history, just to illustrate how impressive this run is. Oh, also, that World Cup win in 1998 was the first time France even made the final at a World Cup. So if you think France has been this good forever, I'm gonna need you to check your history at the door. Sup? I hated that. What was that? Complete the history lesson. How did France actually win the World Cup 4 years ago? Well, they got out of a group with Denmark, Peru, and Australia. A few of those teams that'll sound familiar this time around. Played one of the best games of the World Cup 4 years ago against Argentina to get out of the round of 16. Then they beat Uruguay, they beat Belgium, and then matched up with Croatia, of course, in the final and won going away. It was a convincing, offensively explosive run, and it almost happened again at the Euros last year. The French have, of course, not missed a beat. Euro 2020, which was played in 2021 for obvious reasons, France looked like they were set to go on and win again. They got a group of death, finished ahead of Germany and Portugal in that group of death, albeit with just 1 win, but they never lost, got to the round of 16 against Switzerland and took a lead late in the game. It was 3-1 France until the 81st minute when Switzerland scored 2 goals, went to penalties, Kylian Mbappe missed, and Switzerland knocked France out of the Euros. This is particularly bitter because 5 years before that, in the Euros in 2016, France let everybody know how good they were going to be. They won their group, ironically above Switzerland, stampeded their way to a final, running through Ireland, Iceland, and then Germany very impressively before losing in extra time to Portugal. France was hosting this tournament. This buoyed the belief. They went into the World Cup and they won. Now they go to the Euros again. They look really good. They get knocked out earlier this time, but they're going to the World Cup again, buoyed perhaps by how well they played, or just generally buoyed by the fact that France seems to be virtually unbeatable. That win by Switzerland was a shock, but getting out of the group of death is tremendously impressive and a sign of the fact that France on the big stage, nobody's really been able to beat them, touch them. Unless you make cheese with the holes in it, you can't really beat France right now. And it's only getting worse if you're trying to play against France because the player to look out for on the French national team is just a nobody named Karim Benzema. He was out of the national team for 6 years because of his involvement in a massive messed up controversy that I feel like we'll never get to the bottom of, but he's been invited back. He was back on the team for the Euros. And when you add him in with, the other guys that made that World Cup win possible, it seems unfair. Mainly because Karim Benzema is basically the missing ingredient. He's arguably the best striker in the world. He just won the award for the best player in the world, the Ballon d'Or, and he's absolutely on fire as a goal scorer. Doesn't seem to be slowing down a smidge, even though he's getting old. And him being in the team frees up more creative forward players like Antoine Griezmann and Kylian Mbappe to basically go do their thing. They don't have to put pressure on the back line or make those runs off the shoulder of the center backs. That is what Karim Benzema is for. And when you count the fact that Benzema is going to be all sorts of fired up because he didn't get to participate in a World Cup win 4 years ago and he wants to go get his own, I pity the fool that stands in his way. But if you happen to be standing in his way, what are you going up against? How do you organize a team with this kind of talent? Well, France has tipped its hand. If we look back at their last World Cup qualifying match, a match they needed to make sure they did not lose, it involved a 5-2-3 is what I will call it. You have the back three, the two wing backs, the two central midfielders, an attacking midfielder, which is most often Antoine Griezmann, and then Kylian Mbappe and Karim Benzema when all the chips are on the table. It's a sturdy formation reliant on a very important midfield pivot, which, considering they have Aurélien Tchouameni and Eduardo Camavinga, they've got one of the best double pivots available. If we look at all the recent Nations League matches, a win against Austria, a loss against Denmark, this is the way that France decides to line up every single time. It will be a 5-2-3 when it comes to the World Cup itself, and Griezmann will be the orchestrating number 10, the proverbial number 10. The center of defense is going to be a little less experienced. They obviously have Raphael Varane, but he might not be available. There's still Jules Koundé. They've got Benoit Badiashile, Dayo Upamecano. There are options in defense. And even though N'Golo Kante is also hurt and is going to miss the World Cup, there are so many good French midfielders. I mean, you have Nkunku at Leipzig, you have Jordan Veretout, you have Matteo Guendouzi, who's very good as kind of a box-to-box guy. Adrien Rabiot's kicking about and has been getting the right call-ups. France has ridiculous talent and ridiculous depth. So how do they square up against the rest of their group? Well, if you saw the graphic at the beginning, the group is very similar to what it was 4 years ago. Weirdly, it's Denmark and Australia again. The only difference this time is the Pot 3 team is Tunisia, which is actually better news for France. It's an easier group than they had 4 years ago. Mainly because Australia's down, Tunisia really outdid themselves to make it to the World Cup in the first place, and Denmark, although they're coming in white hot, excellent qualifying, and they beat France in the Nations League, which who knows how much we can trust Nations League results. People aren't really trying, but they still did. Even if France loses to Denmark, there's no way they don't get out of this group. This is a very easy group. It would be a shock if France did not get out of this group, and for what it's worth, I will pick them to finish first, even though I really like what Denmark's been able to do, and their recent form's fantastic. You got to knock out the champ on the dance floor at the World Cup. I think France wins the group, probably easily. And once they get out of the group, this has to be one of the favorites for the tournament. They have the best attacking trio that you could probably hope for. Antoine Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe, these two guys carried France to a World Cup. They both scored 4 goals apiece in 2018. You add in arguably the world's best striker to that, and 2 young, amazing, world-class midfielders like Camavinga and Tchouameni. It doesn't seem fair, and that's what it feels like when you look at these top few national teams. France might just be the favorite for the whole World Cup again. Their main concern is probably the World Cup curse. But 50% of the last 6 World Cups, France has made the final. Wouldn't bet against them doing it again. And when in doubt, they could always break out their secret weapon. Oh, it's Benjamin Pavard! Oh, Pavard! The rest of this group could absolutely get spicy. Denmark could make it interesting, but you might have missed our preview of all the first 3 groups in the World Cup. If you did, this is the playlist. Absolutely recommend not moving and just binging that. Where you have to go, stay right here, right there. You know the reason France is on this hot streak? Well, it's because they watch the streams on Twitch. We'll be doing live watch-alongs to every World Cup match. The link is down in the description. I would love to be joined by you. I mean, France already does it, and look at the results. They watch the stream all the time.